Welcome to part 4. Hope you are enjoying. After showering and changing into casual clothes, the two met on the stairs. They both went towards the kitchen and chatted about their day. No one else was around, probably hidden in one of the bedrooms. After all, they had learned a bit these last few days. Harry was just worried that they were plotting on his return to Hogwarts. He'd pretty much made up his mind about that. He was just unsure how his friends would take it. Still, he was going to stand by his decision. They'd just have to accept that. Making to the kitchen, they spotted Bill poring over some documents. "What's up, Bill?" Harry asked, sitting at the table. "Just going over some stuff for work." "Just because I took a bit of time off my regular job, doesn't mean the goblins won't give me busy work," the redhead said, tucking the parchment in his robes. "How was the ministry?" he asked, reaching over and getting some tea. "Informative," Sirius answered, pouring his own tea. "Met a few people we needed to, and a few we didn't," he said, taking a sip. He added a bit more milk and tried again. "Better." "Yeah, there was the minster and his toady," Harry grumbled, grabbing a biscuit. "Merlin, she gives me the creeps. All that pink, and that face, worse is her voice," he added, shaking his arms, like trying to rid it of spiders. "She sounds like Mickey Mouse on helium." "What?" the other two men said. "Never mind," Harry sighed, vowing to take Sirius out to see a few movies, or something. Bill did a full body shudder. He too didn't like that Umbitch woman. "Damn, sorry you had to meet her." "She's crazy, that one. She tried to get Gringotts closed, stupid woman. She almost started a rebellion," he said, glancing at Sirius. "If she tries that shite again, I'll be there to stop her. That book has a lot of blackmail material, and I can't wait to use it on that toad," Sirius said with an evil smirk. "Good for you," Harry stated, matching his brother's evil grin. "Care to share?" Bill said, leaning forward a bit. "Nay, I think I'll keep it for a moment. I'll let you all know at the meeting, then you can use it at your leisure," the dogman stated, giving them a wink. "Sound good," Bill said, sitting back in his chair. "Can I tell the others?" Harry asked, a hopeful look on his face. "If they need it, then tell them. Until then, let's keep to us," Sirius said with another wink. "All right, but if they need it, I'm spilling," the teen stated, folding his arms. "You do that," his brother said with a nod. "I'll use it for the goblins." "They would love to have dirt on her," Bill stated, almost clapping with glee. "Anyway, Bill, there's a meeting tonight," Sirius said, looking at Bill. "We have some things to go over. Tonks says it's about Umbitch, speak of the devil, so we might be using that blackmail material sooner than I thought." "Everyone?" the man asked, quirking his eyes. "Not Ron or Ginny?" Sirius said thoughtfully, rubbing his goatee. "Hermione either, come to think about it. Remind me to remind her to write her parents. Actually, I need to write them as well. Or maybe, Andy can take her home and explain what's going on," he said thoughtfully, then shook his head. The Grangers weren't a problem. But he felt that maybe he could get Andy to have them leave the country for a few years. They should be back from their vacation in a week or so. He would see what they could do then. The twins should come if they want. They'll just listen anyway. This way you can control the information, Harry added, looking towards Bill. "Sounds about right," Bill said, examining Harry for a moment. "You guys want to tell me what happened this morning?" he asked, peering at Harry's diminished scar. "Yeah, but let's go to the study, I have better wards there," Sirius said. picking up his cup and leading the way. They could hold the meeting there, but it just wasn't big enough. Then again, he could put the same wards on the kitchen, but that would interfere with the flow. On the other hand, he could put temporary wards up. Yeah, he'd do that. Now that he had a wand that was compatible with him. Both Bill and Harry grabbed refreshments and followed. They made it to the study unmolested and took seats facing each other. Keep this under your hat, yeah. We did an adoption ritual this morning, Sirius started, knowing Bill would keep the secret. The redhead was an honorable man, and he worked at the bank. So yeah, he could keep it to himself. Anyway, Harry here, said that magic told him we couldn't do it with riddle in his head, he finished, picking up his cup. Harry squirmed in his seat and tried looking elsewhere but Bill, who was staring at him with a bit of awe. Then the teen firmed his jaw and glared back. It's not like I ask magic to talk to me, he said gruffly. Magic? Talked? I mean, why, the confused redhead asked, never having heard of such a thing. I just told you, I don't know. Harry snapped, still glaring at the confused man. Can you explain what you were feeling at the time? At first, it was like there was an argument in my head. Magic was fighting with Tom, and then I felt, I don't know, like I should just stop them both. Then the voice said, that if I wanted to be related to Sirius, I needed to let it do its work, Harry explained, scrunching his brow trying to remember it all. Then when Sirius was going to end the spell, it warned me not to let him. Then it told me to fight. Like I would help it end the battle faster, he finished, looking at both men to see if they understood. Right before it all ended, I felt like someone was hugging me. Like I was loved, he added with a bit of a smile. The other two were both in deep thought over what they heard. Each had a look of deep contemplation, and their eyes were moving back and forth, like they were reading over all the material that they had ever read on magic. But not getting the answers they wanted. Right, well, that's different, Bill said, pulling himself together. Did anything else happen, he asked, turning his attention to Sirius. Sirius got up and got the vial from his safe. This came from his scar. I don't know if it's a Horcrux or just dark magic, he said, handing the container to the curse breaker. It still feels evil, he said, glaring at the vial like it should spontaneously combust. How dare that be in Harry's head? Bill took it, placed it on a table, waved his wand over it and then sighed. It's not a Horcrux anymore, but there's malevolent magic in there. Better destroy it with the rest. He picked it back up and handed it to Sirius, who put it back in the safe. There was a question I wanted to ask, Harry said, watching Sirius sit back down. I told Sirius a bit, but something strange happened while magic was fighting the Horcrux, he said, and then went on to explain the battle that had happened in his mind. That is strange, Sirius said, thinking about what he knew from Remus Occlumency. What was your question? Bill asked, pondering over that form of mind protection, over the one the goblins used. Maybe he could read the book and then offer to teach the goblins. That might get him promoted. Or at least a bit of gold. Not that he was greedy, but with a poor family like his, every bit helped. He'd have to ask Remus first. It was the man's invention. Oh, maybe Remus could get some gold too. He really needed it now that Umbitch had passed those werewolf laws. He'd have the man talk to the goblins to see if they could get a ghost writer for that book. That would be helpful to everyone. Heck, he'd even volunteer. If someone dies in my head, do they die in real life? Harry asked, bringing Bill out of his thoughts. Harry was worried about that. What if Snape or Dumbledore tried to read his mind and had to fight his aliens? He didn't want to kill someone just because they were a snoop. That's a very good question, Sirius said, looking to Bill to see if he could answer it. Yeah, really good. The problem is, I don't know that form of occlumency, so I can't answer it. I know it's thought that if you die in your sleep, you might die for real. But that has never been proven. I mean, how could it? You can't access someone's mind once they are dead to find out what they dreamed of. Still, I wouldn't take any chances. If someone comes into your mind, scare the ever-loving crap out of them and get them out of there as soon as possible, Bill explained the best he could. I know what you described to me. Has me quaking in my boots. I don't want to meet what's in your head, Sirius said, leaning over and mussing up Harry's hair to lighten the mood. Good job, Harry. You've thought of something even Albus would pause at. Yeah, if I was going back to Hogwarts, I'd use it on Snape and Dumbledore, Harry smirked. His eyes glazed at the image of Snape running down the hall, screaming like a little girl. Then the picture flipped to the headmaster offering the aliens some candy and losing a hand and then running like a girl. Well, that wasn't particularly funny, but still, he chuckled. So, you've decided, his new brother asked, leaning forward a bit to look in Harry's eyes. He wanted to make sure that it was what Harry wanted. Yeah, with the prophecy and all, I think it's best to be trained by the best. Maybe, I can catch up on a few of my non-magical studies too. I feel like a right idiot when I talk to Dudley. And if you knew just how dumb Dudley is, you would understand my pain, Harry said, giving a huge sigh of relief, knowing he was making the right decision. We can do that, Sirius said seriously, leaning back in his chair. If Remus and Bill can't get you caught up, I'll hire a Muggleborn, or something. I can help with math, Bill offered, grinning at the teen. Believe it or not, it's mandatory to have at least Euro levels to be a curse breaker. The goblins give you 1 year to get there. If you can't, then you can't work for them. Wow, I didn't know that, Harry said, thinking of his future. Curse breaking sounded like something he could do. We'll set up a schedule with all those that are going to tutor you, Sirius said, going over who he was going to ask. Bill and Remus for certain, but would Moody and Andy want to help? Ted could give a few lessons on the government, and Andy could keep teaching protocol. The problem was all but Mad Eye worked, and he wasn't sure if the one-eyed man would want to come out of retirement, especially after what he had suffered last year. Good. But not until after the rest go back to school, okay. Harry said, not wanting to give up his summer. Okay, I'll get with everyone during the meeting tonight, Sirius agreed. Then shoot Harry out of the room with hand gestures. Bill, the twins want to stay here too. I told them they had to ask Sirius, but I think they should go back to school. You know, to protect Ron and Ginny. I can imagine Malfoy taking potshots at them, Harry said, looking back and forth between the two men. I have no issue either way. If they want to stay here, if it's okay with Sirius, they can. However, I do see your point. Still, Ron and Ginny are good with a wand, so they might not be needed there, Bill said, going over the many different scenarios. I'll talk it over with them, Sirius offered. I don't have an issue either, but I want to make sure that they know what they're doing. Besides, didn't you want them to hunt the Horcrux? He said, looking at the oldest Weasley child. Yeah, I kinda forgot about that, Bill said, rubbing his neck. I'll talk to them then. I really need someone of age there. Settled then, after the meeting tonight, you can use this room to talk to them, Sirius said. Clapping his hands to his knees and standing up to get a butterbeer from the bar. It was too early to drink. Wait, why are we going to Gringotts tomorrow? The teen asked. Standing up and then pilfering some cookies for him and his friends. Sirius reached over and grabbed one for himself, then settled in his chair. He took a bite before answering. I have to grab something there, and you need to look over your finances. I'm sure you haven't done that yet, he said, taking another bite of the chocolatey goodness. Am I going to be there for tonight's meeting? The teen asked, wondering to himself if this adult would treat him right. It's about you, so yes, you're going to be there, his brother said, nodding his head. Go on, find your friends and let them know you're staying here. Better to get it over with now, he said, leaning back in his chair. Let the twins know that Bill wants to talk to them after dinner. Okay. I'm going, Harry said, hiding his treats in a napkin. Then shoving the bundle in the crook of his arm. You can tell them what you wish, remember they're not a Clumans, he reiterated, picking up his still hot tea. Magic was wonderful. I'll remember, Harry said and left the room. He wandered up the stairs to the twins' room, which is where he thought everyone would be. They were. Hey, Harry, came the greeting from most of them. What's up, guys? He asked as he took a seat on the bed next to Ron. He laid out the biscuits on the bed and gestured for everyone to grab one. Nothing much, Ron said with a shrug, snatching up a cookie. It's dead boring around here, now that Mum isn't making us clean. I've even finished my summer homework, the boy grumbled, shooting a glare at the twins when they started to chuckle. Right funny you are. You've finished yours too, he said to his look-alike brothers. They just laughed harder and each reached over and snagged a treat. Ginny just smiled and ate her biscuit. I finished mine at the beginning of the summer, she mockingly sniffed. Harry reached over and put his hand on his best friend's forehead. Are you sick? He asked, grinning like a loon. Your homework is done, and it isn't the end of August. Leave off, the redhead said, pushing the other boy's hand away. Did you need help with your homework, Harry? Hermione asked, reaching and taking her share of the treats. Nah, I got it done a few days ago. Andy insisted, Harry said, leaning against the bedpost. Well, that's good. Now none of us will be going back to Hogwarts unprepared, Hermione said with a big smile. Yeah, about that, Harry said with a grimace. I'm not going back, he said firmly. I don't feel right returning, and I can't shake the feeling that it would be the worst year of my life if I did. Damn, came the joint reply. With only Hermione saying, really? Yeah, Sirius and I ran into this woman at the ministry, and she is downright creepy. Her name is Dolores Umbridge. She dresses like a pink toad, and it's gross to look at. But, when she looked at me, I felt worse than when even Aunt Petunia does. Like she wants me dead, Harry explained, making sure they knew to watch out for that witch. Yeah, Dad has talked about her, Ron said, sitting up straight and looking at his siblings. They were all nodding in agreement. He said we were to stay away from her. Do you think she's going to be at Hogwarts? He asked in horror. I don't know for sure, but there might be a chance she is, Harry said with trepidation. Maybe he should go to protect his friends. His face took a downward thoughtful cast. His mind wandered on that, while the rest were telling Hermione about Umbridge. He heard snatches of conversation, but they were saying pretty much what Bill and Sirius had said. Ron smacked him in the head, bringing him back to reality. I know what you're thinking, his friend said, then narrowed his eyes at him and pointed a finger. Don't, he demanded. But was as far as he got when George butt in. No, the twin said, also pointing his finger in Harry's direction. We'll go back for our last year, and we'll watch out for these three, he said, glaring at anyone to defy that statement. Too right, Fred agreed. You're not responsible for the well-being of us, Or our family, he stated harshly. You're right. I know you're right, Harry said with a sigh. It's just he left it hanging. It's your saving people thing, Hermione said with a smile. We'll be all right. I have a plan, she said conspiratorially. You were part of it, but if you're not coming back, I can pick someone else, she added reassuringly. Leave it to you to make a plan, Harry teased. Did you make a schedule too? He asked with a wide grin. Yes, as a matter of fact I did. Thank you very much, she said faux snottily, sticking her nose in the air. Only you, Hermione, Ron said, nudging her with his foot. Don't worry, Hermione, we understand, the twins said. Patting her shoulders, a bit roughly, until she shooed their hands away. Yeah, you're the smartest witch I know, Ginny said, giving her friend a smile. She really hadn't said much this summer. It wasn't that she was shy. No, far from it. However, she learned in her first year, that being silent makes people forget you're there. Then you learn more because they talk more. Tom may have messed with her head, but the teen had taught her some good stuff. Not that she'd ever tell this bunch. The therapy that she got because of Bill when they were in Egypt, helped a lot. At first her mum and dad didn't want him to spend that kind of money on her. Dumbledore had told them that she was fine. But Bill, the moment he heard what had happened, he whisked her to the bank and put her in front of a wizard healer. After an examination, the man declared her possession free, but she needed a mind healer. So, Bill got her one. She still wrote the man monthly. She made a vow to herself that she was going to pay her brother back. Still, she felt loved at his gesture. She was miffed at her parents, but they worshipped the headmaster. A bit too much, if you asked her. That could be a bit of Tom talking, but it made sense to her. She hated that her mum thought the man hung the moon. Her dad wasn't that bad, but he was cowed by her mum. Still, it's good that you have a plan. I know we've had our share of bad professors. I hope your plan can help with that, Harry said, getting serious. He really couldn't shake the thought that it was going to be a bad year for everyone. He wondered if he could enlist the house elves to keep an eye on the students. He'd ask Dobby later. It will, she replied, beaming at his confidence. Then she mumbled to herself, I hope. I believe in you, Hermione, Ron said, giving her an encouraging smile. Thanks, Ron, that means a lot, she replied. Looking around the room for something else to talk about. If Harry wasn't going to go back to Hogwarts, then she needed to re-evaluate her plan before she told them what it was. There is one thing you three can help me with, she said, pointing to the twins and Harry. What? All three of them said, then chuckled. I need a room. A hidden room, she stated, thinking over her plan. There are lots of rooms, but I don't know of any hidden ones, Harry said, rubbing his chin in thought. We don't either. Like Harry said, there are tons of rooms, but hidden, not so much, George offered. Hey, Harry, Ron said, making the other teen turn his way. Call Dobby, he said, waving his hand like Dobby would appear. Sure, I have to ask him something anyway, Harry agreed, and called the elf. Once they greeted each other, which caused everyone to laugh at Dobby's exuberance, he waved to Ron. Hey, Dobby, you worked at Hogwarts for a year or two, right? The redhead asked. Smiling at the little guy. Yes, Dobby did, the elf replied, puffing out his chest. Do you know of any secret rooms? He asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Oh, Dobby knows a secret. Secret room, the little guy enthused. Can you tell us where it is? Ginny asked, smiling at everyone, just happy that that was taken care of. Oh, yes, Miss Weasley, Dobby can. It is being on the 7th floor, across from a tapestry of a man trying to teach trolls to be dancing, Dobby said, bouncing up and down like he was the happiest he'd ever been. Well, except when Harry Potter had taken him as his elf. I think I know the one you're talking about, Fred said, picturing it in his mind. Didn't we hide there once? George asked, looking at his twin, who nodded. I don't think it is big enough for what Hermione wants, Dobby, he said to the elf. Oh, no, Mr. Weasley, it is being as big as you needs, Dobby disagreed. How? Harry asked. He too remembering a room on that floor, and the headmaster once told him of a disappearing Lou. Yous needs to be walking back and forth 3 times, thinkings on what's you needs. And the room will be appearing, Dobby said, still bouncing. Oh, was the collective response. Thanks, Dobby. I have another question for you. Can the elves at Hogwarts keep an eye on the students? I have a bad feel about the new Dada teacher, and I'd feel better if they could help, Harry inquired, hoping beyond hope that they could. Dobby wills be asking thems. I is being knowing that they is being limited on what's they can be doing. But Dobby will ask them to at least tell a teacher if they is being seeing anything that needs to best reported, the elf said thoughtfully, rubbing his large ears. That's great, Dobby. Thanks, Harry said, squeezing his elf's shoulder. Thanks, Dobby, the rest of the group added, all clapping the elf on the back. Dobby must be going now, the prideful, yet embarrassed elf said, and disappeared. Was that what you were looking for? Harry asked, turning to his female friend. That's exactly what I need, she gushed, still re-evaluating her plans. With this room, and the help of the elves, they might just get through whatever had Harry spooked. I'm glad, Harry said, then looking at his watch. It was 3 hours before the meeting, so he said, there's a meeting tonight at 6, George, Fred. You guys are invited, but the rest of you can't come, he added, to the other 3. Bill said he wanted to talk to you about something. Oh, they asked. He said after the meeting, but maybe he'll let the others know too. I'm not sure how much is being shared, but Sirius is pretty good at not hiding things, Harry said with a shrug. We'll ask him, Fred said, finishing off his cookie before the meeting, George said. Swiping another biscuit. What will you guys be doing? Harry asked the other 3. We can go over my plan, Hermione said with a shrug. There was no use crying over spilt potion. Yeah, said the 2 gloomy youngest Weasleys. Buck up, guys. I will tell you what I can. However, you need to read this book I have when I'm done with it. It'll protect your mind, then you can know more, Harry said, trying to cheer them up. We can actually teach them, Fred said, hugging his little sister with one arm. Yeah. They might learn better with verbal instructions, George said, doing the same to his little brother. Great, Harry stated, rubbing his hands together. So, what do we do in the meantime? He asked everyone. Lunch, Ron said, getting up from the bed. It's 3 in the afternoon, Hermione stated, aghast that they had missed a meal. To the kitchen. The twins crowed, and grabbed arms and pulled those still sitting up and dragged them out of the room. To the kitchen, Harry and Ginny agreed. Letting themselves be pulled along. They made a lot of noise going down the stairs, but that was okay, they were all happy. The ominous feeling Harry had forgotten, for now. An hour later, Moody and Remus came through the flue. Harry and the other kids were still sitting at the table, just messing around. Harry and Ron were playing chess. Hermione and Ginny were going over Ginny's next year's Dada studies. The twins were watching the boys and giving Harry some really bad advice, just to see if he'd take it. He didn't. The two men staggered in, looking like they needed a nap. Their clothes were rumpled, and there was dirt on their face and in their hair, not to mention on their robes. There were even bits of branches sticking out of their hair. "Harry, where's Sirius?" Mooney asked, wiping the dirt and ash off his shoulders, and looking around the room like the man he was asking about was in the cupboards. "You never knew with that prankster." "In the study with Bill, last I looked," the teen answered, giving him a quizzical look. "Are you two okay? You look like you fought with a tree and lost," he said, smirking a bit when Moody glared at him. "No, this is just from staking out a certain place." "We found something," Remus said, still brushing off his clothes. Then he looked up at the worried faces and added with a grin, "Don't worry, it's nothing bad. It might actually be good news." "Come on, Lupin, let's check in," the retired Auror said, stomping out of the room. He had already cleaned his clothes and wanted to get the report in so he could wash his hands and face. Remus just shrugged, cast a cleaning charm, then waved to the kids and followed. They too came to the study and entered the open door. Alastair made sure to close it behind them. He felt the wards on the room and added a few of his own. Not that the news they brought back was overly classified, but it needed to be talked out first. "Well, we've got the lay of the land and it's good news," the one-eyed man said, taking a seat across from Bill. "That's good," Sirius said, releasing his tense shoulders. He had been tensed for a while now. These two should have been back ages ago. "We've enough bad news today," he added, waving them to continue. "Right, so, we landed outside the trip zone, and cased the area. It's all open area, except in the back, where there's an ornamental garden, with topiary." "A lot of topiary," Remus began, looking to Moody to continue. "Malfoy being a bit of a show-off can work to our advantage. We also confirmed that old Voldy is there as well and his Horcrux. It seems he's keeping his Death Eaters there as well. I think we might have made him a bit paranoid, not that that was hard to do. Riddle has always thought the world was out to get him," Alastair said, leaning back in his chair to indicate that he was done. "All good news, but what about the wards?" Bill asked, since it would be him to bring them down. "Did you get the schematics down?" "Yeah, that part was easy. It's the standard Malfoy family wards, with the trip ward. If we can bring the trip ward down, it should be a matter of an hour for you to bring down the major ones," Moody said, taking out a piece of paper that he had made notes on. "Wouldn't Riddle put up some of his own?" Sirius asked, thinking that's what he'd do. "No, it'll leave a signature and he's hiding at the moment. Fudge burying his head in the sand is working to Riddle's advantage. The less people think he around, the more he has the element of surprise," Moody explained. "How far do the main wards go again?" Bill asked, looking at the paper he was just handed. 75 feet out from the house. Then the trip wards end 15 feet beyond that, was the answer. "These notes are really good, Alastair," the curse breaker said, still going over them. "They were very concise, and he should have no problem bring both wards down." "There's a meeting in 2 hours, Sirius said, looking at his watch. "You two might want to go and clean up, take a nap, get something to eat." "I'm not sure which, but take the time to relax," he added with a smile. "Who's going to be here?" Moody asked, getting up from his chair. He could use something to eat. "Me, you, Remus, Bill, Tonks, Kingsley, Harry, the twins, and possible Amelia," the dogman answered, picking up his tea and taking a sip. "House elves are wonderful creatures, they can keep your teacup full and at just the right temperature." "Andy and Ted don't want to join us." Andy said that if there was something they needed to know, Tonks would tell them. They are just here to help with the kids. Good, I like the fact that Bones might be here. We could use her help on a few things. She's got some influence that we don't. Not even you, with all your money, the old man said, stretching out some kinks in his back. He was far too old to be casting houses but needs must. Yeah, I have a feeling she and I are going to be working hand in hand. I've got blackmail, and money. She's got political pull, Sirius agreed, raising his cup up in an agreeing gesture. Too right, Moody said, and then left the room. The first thing he did was hit the loo. Using the little sink, he cleaned up as best he could. Then he wandered around looking for somewhere to settle his old bones. He needed to eat and then grab a quick nap. He headed to one of the ladies' parlors, that no one used, called an elf, got food, then kicked back on a fainting couch. Back in the study, Remus got up too. I'm going to talk to the kids. I want to see what they've been up to. We haven't had much time to catch up, the ex-professor said, then putting words to action, he too left. Are those notes going to do you any good? Sirius asked, putting his cup down and standing. He wanted to walk around a bit. His legs were asleep. He and Bill had been sitting too long, going over strategies. Like what to do about Umbitch. Oh, yeah, like I told Alastair, they are very good, Bill said, folding the paper and putting it in his pocket. Great, I'm going to join Mooney in the kitchen, feel free to hit the library. I'll tell an elf to open it for you. Who knows, you might find something to make your easy job easier, Sirius said, heading for the door. I'll do that, Bill said, joining him. Sirius did call Creaker and had him let Bill in the library, then he joined the teens and his friend. They spent the next 2 hours going over pranks and Quidditch. Everyone was comparing notes, even Hermione. They had thought up some elaborate schemes, that the twins couldn't wait to enact. Dinner was served right before the meeting. Those that were going to be in the meeting flew in and sat drinking tea or coffee, whichever they preferred. When dinner was over, the kids, bar Harry and the twins, left. But not without a lot of grumbling. Andy made sure they all headed upstairs and got ready for bed. Not that they had a curfew, but at least they were staying out of trouble. Everyone that was going to the meeting was there in the kitchen. Sirius and Alastair both put up some impressive wards. Amelia wanted to add a few of her own, but trusted Moody to plug up any holes. Great, Sirius said, sitting at the head of the table, everyone is here. Does everyone know everyone else? He asked, looking around to see if they did. There were nods all around. Even the twins knew everyone since their dad worked with most here. Amy, glad you could come, Sirius said, giving her a winning grin. Don't call me Amy, she snapped. I happen to like my name, unlike others. She glared at Tonks. Tonks saw her look and shrugged. She made no qualms about telling anybody and everybody that she detested her name. Sorry, Sirius said, not looking sorry at all. Okay, Moody and Mooney have figured out that Riddle is hiding out at Malfoy Manor. They've given the ward plans to Bill here. We're going to take our time and suss it all out. I looked up a few things in the library, Bill said, pulling out Moody's notes. I am positive that I can circumvent them with little problem, he added smugly. Who is this Riddle person, and why is he hiding? I thought you said Voldemort was hiding there? Oh, Amelia said, as it dawned on her that it might be Voldemort's real name. She didn't like that they were working as vigilantes. However, they couldn't work with the Aurors because Fudge was in denial. Damn that man anyway. He tied her hands at every effort she made to fight a war. Since Harry and Sirius had come to her office, she had been putting things into motion, on the sly. But like she said, her hands were tied, so she couldn't do much. Stupid politics. Yeah, we found out how Riddle, or Voldy as you know him, is still among us, Sirius answered, pulling out the vial of stuff that came out of Harry. He leaned over and handed it to her. Like is said earlier, he made Horcruxes. And this is one of them, she asked, eyeballing the vial. It's the remains of one, Bill explained, watching her face to see her reaction. Oh, dear Merlin, and you just handed it to me, she gasped, dropping the vial on the table. We've destroyed two, accidentally, there are two here. The rest as you see are going to be hard to get, Moody said, leaning back in his chair. Yes, Sirius told me this morning that they had been destroyed, she agreed, knowing that if anyone could help, it would be Mad Eye Moody. I looked over the list he gave me, and if you're right and they are in Malfoy Manor, then yes, they will be hard to get to. Especially if Riddle is there, she said, adjusting her monocle. We're making a plan, Bill assured her. Plausible deniability on your part, he hinted, giving her a wink, when made her frown. I see, was all she said. Until then, Tonks, you had news, Sirius said, directing his and everyone else's attention to the Metamorphmagus. Yeah, I heard a rumor that I'm sure is 100% true, the young woman said, her hair turning a bright blue. It's been bandied about the ministry that Umbitch is the one who sent the Dementors after Harry, she said, anger in her voice. Is there proof? Amelia asked instantly, writing that down on her notebook. She hadn't had time to look into it after they had left. Honestly, she was more worried about Riddle. Now that Tonks was offering her a lead, she might just be able to finally put that pink monstrosity in prison. No, was the frustrated answer, making many of them frown. What the rumors says, is that she had orders from Fudge to silence Harry. Unless she slipped up and left a written order, I'm not sure how you can pin it on her. Wait, she wanted to kill me? Harry asked angrily. I don't even know the woman. I've only met her once, and I can tell you that, yeah, come to think of it, she seems the type. It's worse, Amelia said, putting her notepad down. She's going to be teaching at Hogwarts, she dropped that bombshell. Fuck, Harry said, throwing himself back in his chair. I'd say language, but I happen to agree. Whose bright idea was that? Never mind, Fudge, right? Sirius said, his hands clenching in rage. Got it in one. From what I understand, Malfoy has been whispering in his ear that Dumbledore wants his job and is forming an army of students to get it from him. Nothing will sway him from this, Bones said, shaking her head at the Minster's stupidity. Everyone knows Dumbledore doesn't want that position. He had been content with the 3 he had. He had lost 2, due to Fudge, but Amelia would bet her pension that those would be handed back to the man the second that Voldemort was declared alive. She also knew that there was no way to stop it. In her opinion, that was too much power for one man. Good thing I'm not going back to Hogwarts, but what of my friends? If she's out to silence me, then she might use them, Harry said, a great deal of defeat in his voice. Hey, Tonks, can you get some time off, say, I don't know, about a year? Maybe, talk to your boss, Amelia hint, Sirius asked, making everyone perk up. I'm not changing my naughty bits, the Metamorphmagus stated firmly, making quite a few of them chuckle. I also don't think I want to spend a year in the boys' dormitory, she added, huffing a bit. Yeah, that might be a problem, Alastair agreed. Well, what if you slept somewhere else? Harry asked, thinking of the room Dobby told them about. What do you mean? Tonks inquired, lifting an eyebrow in question. Well, Dobby, my house elf friend, told me that there was a room on the 7th floor that can turn into anything you wanted. So, you could have it turn into a flat, or something, then you wouldn't have to sleep with blokes, the teen said, tapping his finger on the table. Why have I never heard of the room? Asked both Remus and Sirius. Well, from what Dobby told me, it's a blank wall until you call it, Harry tried to explain. That's pretty much all I know about it. You'd have to talk to Dobby to find out more. That's a great idea, but how would she get around the bed checks? Bill asked, remembering all the times he got caught sneaking around the castle. McGonagall doesn't do bed checks, Fred said, wondering when that changed. Yeah, she's never done one while we've been there, George agreed, looking confused. Still, we might want to bring her in on this part of our plan. That way she can run interference with Albus and Umbridge, Moody said, adding his 2 newts worth. Good idea. No reason to bring her all the way in, but that might work, Sirius agreed. Still, a vow would not go amiss. I know she's tied with Albus, so I want some insurance that she won't go running to him, he added. That would make it better, but I'm not sure I can pull being you off very well, Tonks said, going over what she knew about the teen in her mind. If I put you on undercover duty, you can start tonight, that way you can spend the next few weeks shadowing him, and get some of his quirks down, Amelia said. Liking the idea that one of her aura would be in the castle where her niece slept. I think, started Remus, that you might not be there that long. He rubbed his chin in thought. Why do you say that? Kingsley asked, pulling out his own notepad. I think that Umbridge will break the law sooner, rather than later. When she does, Tonks here can arrest her, the werewolf said, winking at Tonks. Oh, I like how you think, the currently blue-haired woman said, winking back. While you guys scheme this up. I'm going to pay a visit to the Toad tomorrow, Sirius said, his face set in granite. Don't go doing anything I'd have to arrest you for. You know that there are quite a few people looking for a reason to get you tossed back in Azkaban. Dumbledore being on the forefront, Amelia said, cleaning her eyepiece. Well, not really, but he does seem to be paying extra special attention to you and Harry. What are we going to do about Dumbledore? The dogman asked exasperated. You leave Albus to me, Moody answered, his electric blue eye swirling around in its socket. I've known him longer than all of you, so I'll tend to him and his pet Death Eater. Tonks, Amelia said, while you're there, keep an eye on Snape. You bet, the Aura replied with a wicked grin. Payback is a bitch. What do you want us to do? Fred asked, reminding everyone that they were there. Yeah, besides watching out for the others, is there something we can do? George concurred. I have a spell I want to teach you too. There's a Horcrux at the school that needs finding, Bill said, pulling out a piece of parchment and asking Amelia for her pen. I was going to talk to you after the meeting, but... Well, see me then and I'll teach it to you, and you too, Tonks, he said, reaching across the table for the writing implement. Bones handed it to him, and he wrote the spell down, copied it twice and handed it to the 3. He then gave Amelia back her pen. Good idea, Remus said, nodding in agreement. Come see me tomorrow, Tonks. I want to talk to my brothers tonight, Bill stated, seeing they were reading the spell, and I'll make sure you get it down. If you find what we're looking for, just leave it there and call us. I'm sure we can sneak into the castle to retrieve it, he added, glaring at the twins. "We will, no worries," Fred said, looking at the spell. It didn't seem hard. "Yeah, if it's to do with riddle, I don't want to touch it," George said, also reading the spell. "I've got some two-way mirrors I need to dig up." "I've only got two, so you two will have to share," Sirius said, going over in his mind where he last left them. "I can make more," Remus offered. "We share everything," the twins said haughtily. "Everything," both Tonks and Harry teased. "Yes, take that as you will," they replied, going cross-eyed at the teasing pair. "Just joking," Fred said, laughing at the looks on everyone's face. "Yeah, we keep the naughty bits separate," George stated, he too laughing. "Thank Merlin," Bill grumbled, needing to bleach his brain on that one. "Bill," Kingsley said, grabbing the curse breaker's attention, "what about the one at Gringotts? You are our only lead there." "I'm going to talk to my boss tomorrow. If I tell him what it is, who it belongs to, I'm sure that there must be a way to get it," Bill replied, rubbing the back of his neck. He wasn't positive that that would be the outcome, but he had to try. "That might work," Kingsley said, making a note. "Sirius," the redhead said, bringing the other man's attention away from teasing the twins, "it might help if you came with me," he said, looking toward the older man. "I'm pretty sure someone in your family, or connected to your family, is hiding it in their vault," he added, giving him an inquiring look. "I was going there anyway," the dogman replied with a shrug. "Am I still coming?" Harry wanted to know. "Why wouldn't you be?" was the rejoinder. "Well, if that woman is out to kill me, aren't you going to keep me here?" the teen asked, knowing that's what the headmaster would have done. "Harry, you are 15 years old, I think you can handle yourself with us around. All you would have to do if trouble started was to get out of the way," his brother told him. "I know Albus wanted to wrap you up in cotton, but that's not the way life works. Hiding didn't help your parents, or the Longbottoms. I don't mean to be tactless, but it is the truth," Sirius said with a sigh. "All right, and thanks," Harry said, happy that he wasn't going to be confined to this house. The thought of his parents was a bit of a downer, but he could see the wisdom in those words. "Anything else to discuss?" Sirius asked, looking around the room. "Yeah, I have something," Tonks said, perking up a bit. "Mum wants to know why you are still letting Malfoy have you seat on the Board of Governors, and the Wizengamot. That slimy bastard has been sitting in my seat," Sirius said, slamming his hand on the table. "Whose bright idea? Fudge. I'm going to bury that man, you just wait and see if I don't," he promised, angry and hating that so much had gone wrong due to his illegal incarceration. "Not that it helps, but those seats are entailed, so there might be a precedent." "You'd have to look, and talk to your lawyer," Kingsley stated, going over what he knew about that type of stuff. "You bet, I'm talking to Waters first thing in the morning," Sirius said, still seething. "Actually, I'll flu him when we're done." "Hey, I thought Malfoy was kicked off the board," Harry said, remembering what Dumbledore had told him. "Well, not to him, but at Malfoy. He bought his way back on," grumbled Tonks. "I'm sure he used persuasion too." "Oh, yeah, he's a bastard," Harry said, watching his new brother's face get redder. "I'm going to kill him," Sirius stated, still fuming. Who knows what laws that dark wizard passed using his vote? Or what he did under the black name to the school? Well, he'd find out and fix it, that's for sure. "Go to the ministry tomorrow, you were planning to anyway, and claim them back. You might even be able to impose a penalty for the slight." Like Shacklebolt said, talk to your lawyer, Amelia stated, reaching over and covering his hand. They didn't need him going off half-cocked. Sirius took a deep breath, once, twice, 3 times. He relaxed a bit and looked at Amelia. Thanks, I needed that. Well, that and a shot of fire whiskey, he said, settling back in his chair. Good, now that that is over, I think we've done all we can for the night. I have to get home, I don't want Susan alone longer than necessary, Bones said, standing up and putting her notebook away. Thanks to Harry's warning, she had beefed up her wards. Still, wards fall, and Susan was there alone. If she continued to come to these meetings, then she'd have to ask if her niece could come too. Yeah, I'm knackered, Remus said, giving out a jaw-breaking yawn, so I'm headed to bed. Okay, meeting over. You can use the same rooms you did last night, Sirius said, everyone standing at his words. Harry, Fred, George, you can tell the others about Umbitch, but nothing else, okay, he looked at the teens. Not a problem, Harry said as the twins nodded. Maybe, we can have Hermione tell us more about her plan. She's going to need to know what's happening on that front, Fred said, started to leave. Can we tell them about Tonks? George asked, putting a hand on his twin's shoulder, making his brother stop for a moment. Yeah, that too, I guess. It's not like we can hide it, Sirius agreed, putting his arm over Harry's shoulder and keeping him there while everyone else left. The twins nodded and left to talk to Bill, then they'd hunt the rest down and tell them what they could. Are you sure you want to stay here? Sirius asked one more time, after everyone else left the room. Yeah, especially since that woman is going to be at Hogwarts. Are you going to reclaim your seats? The teen asked, stifling a yawn. You bet your arse I am. And I'm going to make quite a few people's lives a living hell, the dogman said maliciously. Good, was all the answer needed. They headed out of the kitchen when a voice drew them back. Sirius, are you there? Harry and Sirius turned around and looked at the fireplace. There in the flames, was the head of Arthur Weasley. The man looked like he was contemplating something. The two looked at each other, shrugged and turned back to the fireplace. What's up, Arthur? Sirius asked, making the other man's face jerk up. We just finished an order meeting, Mr. Weasley said, making Sirius scoff at the fact that none that were in Grimmauld Place had been called. There was a lot discussed, we settled on a few things, but I can't tell you about them, he said, sheepishly, knowing that it was one of the reasons the others had left. And all this secret-keeping was making him wary of Albus too. Figures, Sirius said, scoffing once more. Yes, well, the other man said. I wanted first to make sure the kids were okay, Arthur said, looking at the man he had entrusted his children to. Yeah, they're good. We just finished a meeting ourselves. Don't worry, Sirius said quickly, the younger kids weren't there, just Bill and the twins. Right now, I'm sure they are all either in bed, or heading to it, he stated with a grin. Andy is keeping a good eye on them, he finished with a wink. Good, good. I'm happy to hear that. They aren't causing you any trouble, are they? The worried father asked. No, they're all good kids, the dogman answered. Great, thanks. I'll make sure Molly knows that they are in good hands, Mr. Weasley said with a grin. Right now, though, Albus asked me to get in touch with you, the redhead said, again looking like he was mulling something over. Oh, what does he want? Black asked, trying to think of any reason the headmaster would need him, when he made it clear he wasn't going to follow him anymore. Well, I must confess, it's Harry he wants to talk to, Arthur stated, glancing at said boy, who just looked confused. Me? What does he want from me? Harry asked, shocked. Well, he could think of many things the old man might want, actually. Like sending him back to the Dursleys. That was not going to happen. Sirius' actions in making him his brother would cause any plans the headmaster had to fail. He wants Severus to teach you occlumency, was the shocking answer. Oh, I have to do this, Harry said, almost bouncing with excitement, grabbing Sirius' arm, yanking on the man's sleeve and making Arthur give him a queer look. Come on, Sirius, this is going to be epic, the teen said, pulling his new brother's arm and almost dragging him to the fireplace. Settle down, Harry, they're not going anywhere. That and I have to tell Andy I'm leaving. Give me a moment, yeah, the other man said, pulling his arm free. He then called Creaker and told him to tell Andy where they were going and that he'd be back soon. With that done, the two went to the fireplace and flew to the burrow. They stepped into the living room. Well, Harry tumbled, but righted himself as soon as he could. He glared at Sirius when the man laughed and looked around the familiar room. There they saw that Albus and Snape were waiting for them. Arthur went and joined his wife on the other sofa, holding her arm to prevent her from going to the two men. He didn't like the look on her face and wanted to avoid an argument. She gave him a look and then settled to watch. They had had many long talks since they left headquarters, and she was put in her place by her husband. Still, she was a middle-aged woman, who had been running a household with an iron fist for an awfully long time. It would take a miracle to change her attitude completely. Headmaster, Harry said politely with a curt nod. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, he added, also nodding to them. Snape, he said, trying to be outwardly respectful, but inside he was grinning like a loon. He couldn't wait to see their reaction. Sirius followed suit, then stood by Harry. Harry, my boy, it is so good to see you, the old man said, his eyes twinkling, like always. I see that living with Sirius has done you some good. I still feel. Albus, not going to happen, was Sirius' immediate rebuttal, accompanied with a hard stare. Very well, the old man sighed. What did you want from me, headmaster? Besides, trying to send me back to Duertcaban? Harry asked, narrowing his eyes at the old man. Harry, I hope one day that you will trust me again. I am only looking out for your best interest, Albus stated, his eyes twinkling again. We'll see, the boy said, still watching the man's eyes twinkle, without actually looking in them. He wondered about that weird phenomenon. He didn't know anyone else's eyes that sparkled like that. Not even Dudley getting presents. Potter, Snape barked, getting up from the sofa he had been sitting on. He stalked towards the teen, stopping a few feet away, when Sirius imposed himself in front of his younger brother. The headmaster has decreed that I must teach you occlumency. Much as I am loath to be around you for any period of time, I do agree that this is a must. You will do as I say. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't need lessons, Harry said, not sorry at all. He hated it when the man went on tirades. Sirius taught me, he added with a smirk. Like this mangy mutt could teach anything, the greasy-haired man sneered, making Sirius glare. Then that glare turned into a smirk. You can test them if you want, Sirius said, winking to Harry, who started choking, like he was holding a laugh. Yeah, I think I've got a grip on it. Sure, why not, go ahead, the teen said, after calming down, then looking the potion's master in the eye. Not hesitating for a moment, Snape lifted his wand, and snapped off the charm, then delved into Harry's mind. This time Harry had one xenomorph larger than the rest of them, the others scurrying around like ants. With that larger one, as soon as he felt the intrusion, he had it superimpose itself over the whole of his mind, making it look like it swallowed the sky. Then the image loomed over the very pale man. The alien opened its mouth and a tinier head came shooting out. Snape, not expecting that, fell on his arse, and Crabbe walked backwards out of the thing's way. His wand firmly grasped in his hand, but for the life of him, pun intended, he couldn't think of a single spell that would hurt. That. He didn't even think the killing curse would be effective. Then the little head opened its mouth and screeched. The whole of Harry's mind shook with the sound. Snape felt the vibrations in his bones, like getting hit with an overpowered tickling charm. Terrified, he dropped his wand and actually fainted, making Harry laugh in real life. Snape was in the brat's mind for merely a second, that felt like hours, and then he woke up on the floor, shaking. Every muscle in his body was tensed in fight or flight mode. It took him a few seconds to realize he was not about to be eaten. "Severus, are you okay?" Albus asked, as he and Molly helped the shaken man off the floor. "You just fell limp. Did something happen?" the old man asked as they guided Snape back to the sofa. "I've never seen anything like what is in Potter's mind," Snape said in a shaky voice, rubbing his hand down his sweaty face. "It is a creature that would terrorize anyone. Even the Dark Lord," he added as an afterthought. "I have no doubt the boy's mind is well protected." "What creature?" Albus asked, thinking on what the man might have possibly seen that would have rattled him so. "I have never seen anything more terrifying in my life." "And I have come face to face with a werewolf," Snape answered. "I will reiterate, the boy's mind is protected." "Are you sure?" Dumbledore asked, hoping that wasn't true. While he did need Harry to protect his mind, the insight given to the teen, judging from the few times Harry had dreamed/envisioned the scenes from Tom's eyes, were immeasurable. Those gave them awareness on what Tom was thinking and doing. He was hoping that Severus could train the boy to block Tom yet see into the other man's mind. If the boy's mind was that well protected, then it was all for naught. Perhaps not, maybe he could still get Harry to spy on Tom. "Harry, while I'm sure that you have strong protections, perhaps you could still attend these lessons," the old man asked, looking over his glasses with wise eyes. "Not a bloody chance in hell," Harry said, shaking his head at the obvious ploy. "Albus, I'm telling you that I can teach him nothing. I can't penetrate even surface memories." "If you don't believe me, then check for yourself," Snape snapped, waving to Harry in a curt manner, as if daring the older man to. There was a small part of him that wanted to see what Albus would do when faced with that creature. "No, I believe you, my boy, but there are still aspects of occlumency that I'm sure young Harry does not realize," Dumbledore pressed. "No, I'm not letting Snape get in my mind again," Harry said firmly, though he was still elated on Snape's reaction to his pets. "Harry, you must realize that this is imperative." "No," was the answer, this time harsher. "Why are you so keen on having Harry taught by Snape?" Sirius asked, both he and Harry still standing by the fireplace. They weren't staying long. "Alas, it is not something I can reveal right now," Dumbledore said with a sigh. He knew that Sirius was very protective of the teen. He would not put it past the man to keep Harry as far away from Severus as possible. There are simply some things that must remain secret. Harry is not old enough to understand. "Then tell me," Sirius demanded, daring the man to say something stupid. "I do not feel that you are emotionally stable enough," was the answer that they knew was coming. "After your childish behavior these last few days, I do not think that you can be trusted with vital information. The old man was shaking his head, like he was so disappointed in the other man. Yeah, that's what I thought. Harry, you done? The dogman asked, looking at the younger man. Oh, yeah, that was great. I never have to worry about this slimy git getting into my mind ever again. Take that as a warning to you too, old man, Harry said, his grin wide enough to split his face. For all you say you care, the shite that you just spouted makes me think much less of you. So much for gaining my trust, he said with a derisive snort. Do not disrespect the headmaster in my house, Molly shouted. She had been against Sirius coming here, but Albus insisted. For all their talks, she was still upset that Arthur wanted the children to stay at the man's house. And nothing she said would dissuade him. Sorry, Mrs. Weasley. I'll wait until he's not here, and then talk to him, Harry said with a shrug. Come on, let's get out of here, Sirius said, grabbing some Floo powder. Arthur, Molly, Albus, Snape, he said, nodding to each. Then he threw the powder in the fireplace and all but shoved Harry through, calling out the address. He wasn't worried about yelling it out, anyone who didn't know wouldn't hear. It was the nature of the charm to prevent that. When they emerged, Harry fell to the floor laughing his arse off. He held his stomach and curled into a ball, he was laughing so hard. Tears were pouring down his face as he fought for breath. He couldn't wait until someone did that again. Maybe he'd set up a few different scenarios. Come on, Chuckles, let's get you to bed. We have a lot to do tomorrow morning. I want to leave when Bill does. After Gringotts, you can come back here. I don't need you at the ministry. Maybe you can ask Tonks to take you kids to a movie. I'm sure the Weasleys would enjoy that, Sirius said, pulling Harry off the floor, who had finally gotten control over himself. That sound good. I didn't think I'd be leaving the house the whole summer, the teen said, still giggling, but starting towards his room. The image of Snape fainting was just too funny. Yeah, just make sure you grab some money while we're at the bank. I don't want you stuck in London, or somewhere, without a way back. While I'm sure Tonks can apparate you guys one at a time, it would be too risky, the other man said, following his brother up the stairs. I will, was all Harry said. They finished the journey to their rooms, and both did their nightly routines, and quickly fell asleep. Harry with a huge grin, remembering what he had done to Snape. The man was sure to have nightmares, unless he took dreamless sleep. The next morning saw everyone at the kitchen table discussing what was going to happen that day. Sirius and Harry took great pleasure on relating what had gone on at the Burrow, which caused almost every to break out in laughter. Harry didn't go into detail about what was in his head, but he did say that it was protected, and once the twins taught them the occlumency they could compare notes. Then they told the other kids what they had discussed last night, getting approval from everyone 17 and under, as well as Tonks. The Weasleys were ecstatic about going to Muggle London to see a movie. They knew what they were, other Muggleborns talked about them all the time, but they had never seen one. Sirius got up to flew his lawyer and get some advice. He made sure to tell Harry to get ready to leave in a half an hour. He had planned on calling him last night, but the request from Albus delayed that. Ted and Andy got up to go to their jobs, and Tonks stayed with the teens. Remus headed to the library, which Sirius opened to everyone, to see if he could find a different way to kill Horcruxes. Not that he didn't trust Bill's way, but more options were better. Moody decided it was time to face Albus and Snape. Harry had regaled them about what he had done the night before, and Alastor wanted to get the talk out of the way. He really didn't like what those two were up to. There was no good reason for the old man to insist that Harry learn something he already knew. Sirius finished with his call and came back to the kitchen. Seeing that Harry was ready, he and Bill went to the flue. Harry followed, dragging his feet. While he wanted to get out of the house, he really didn't want to talk to the goblins. He wasn't even sure why he was tagging along. Sirius was his guardian, he should be handling this. "Come on, Harry, don't dawdle. We need to go," Sirius said, grabbing his arm and dragging him the rest of the way. "You really do need to be there," he finished, throwing the flue powder in the flames. "Fine," Harry said, then called out the address to the leaky cauldron and stepped in. He, as usual, came out arse over tea kettle. Bill just laughed, and picked him up. "I'm going to get Andy to teach you how to flue," Sirius said, stepping out of the fireplace. Harry just grumbled under his breath. Something about it not being his fault. "All right, off we go," Sirius said, ignoring the nasty looks he was getting, while Harry paid no attention to the contemplative looks thrown at him. He knew the article would stir things up a bit, and now people were confused about what to believe. He toyed with the thought of doing another one, but other than Riddle being back, he wasn't sure what topic to discuss. Bill was looking at the two, back at the crowds, and marveling about how they could ignore all the looks directed at them. The three made their way to the bank and were soon climbing the marble step. Other than the looks the trio were receiving, they made it to their destination unmolested. The goblins at the doors bowed to the group and soon they were inside. Bill broke off from the two and headed to talk to his boss. He really hoped that the goblin could help them. He had brought the vial as proof, with Sirius' permission. He even was giving the go-ahead to tell his boss where it came from. Making his way to the back of the bank, he came to the correct door, and knocked on it. "Enter," came the answer from inside. Bill opened the door and came inside. He made it way to the front of the metal desk and stood at quasi-attention. "What can I do for you today, Cursebreaker Weasley?" the goblin asked, setting down his quill. He waved his hand for the man in front of him to take a seat. "I thought you were on light duty until the war was over." "I am, but I found out something that Gringotts needs to know," Bill said, rubbing his sweaty hands on his pants. Not that he was scared of his boss, but he didn't know how the goblin would react to what he found. "Oh," came the inquisitive reply. The still unnamed goblin leaned forward on his desk and folded his hands together. "Yeah, the redhead replied, pulling the vial out of his pocket. "Horcruxes, as in plural. This is a remnant of one that came out of Harry Potter." He placed the vial on the desk and sat back. Bill was not completely surprised at his boss's reaction. While he hadn't been sure, he did know they hated soul magic. The goblin stood up fast enough to knock his chair against the wall. The goblin's face was twisted with a snarl as he glared at the vial on his desk. "Whose?" "Voldemort's." "Why did you bring that evil to the bank?" "I wanted proof of what I said." "Like I said, this is just the leftovers of one. However, judging from the spell on another one we have," he paused, took a deep breath and, "there's one here at the bank," Bill said as calmly as he could. Knowing that the first reaction was going to pale in comparison to this one. Next came a lot of cursing in gobbledygook, while the goblin threw things around the room. None of them came close to hitting Bill, but the man made sure to sit very still, just in case. "Sharp Claw," Bill said, holding up his hands to try and calm his boss. "I think that one of the Death Eaters has it in their vault. I know Sirius Black is here, and he can get into any vault belonging to his family. We have a plan to collect all of these items and destroy them," he said, quickly and calmly. Sharp Claw came from around his desk and moved to the door. He opened it and started shouting down the hall. A few heads popped out of other offices and one goblin took off running. Sharp Claw shouted some more and a few more goblins shot off the other direction. With that done, Sharp Claw closed the door, with a loud bang, and went back to his chair. Even with Black here, we need to talk to Ragnok, the goblin said with a sigh. He shouldn't have exploded like that, but to learn that something so vile was in the bank. Anyway, they knew how to handle cases like these, it just took a bit of work. And lots of paperwork, damn it. Okay, was all Bill said, as he settled in a chair. Meanwhile, Sirius and Harry asked for Harry's account manager, while also asking if the black manager would join them. They were led to a room that had a dark wooden table with 6 chairs. They took 2 on the right side and waited. They didn't have to wait long until they were joined by 2 well-dressed goblins, each holding a ledger. "Greetings, Lord Black, Mr. Potter," the first goblin said, sitting across from them with the other goblins. "I am Spike Point, I will be handling the Potter account. With me is Sliphook, he, of course, will be handling the Black account." "What happened to my old account manager?" Sirius wanted to know. "He's dead," was all the answer they got. Truthfully, he had been executed for not getting Sirius a trial. The dead goblin had been taking payments from Malfoy to keep evidence from the Ministry, among other things. By doing this, it kept the vault from being used, and if found out then Gringotts could be charged with accessory in-line theft. No matter what type of stealing was happening, the most goblins abhorred thieves. Sure, every now and then a goblin would do something stupid, but they were usually found out, and their whole family suffered for ages. After all, if they bred one thief, who knows how many untrustworthy goblins came from that clan. "Okay, so how does my account look?" "I know it hasn't seen an activity since grandfather died," Sirius said, pulling the ledger to him, when the goblin waved him to do so. "Wait, what in Merlin's name is this?" he almost shouted, seeing many withdrawals from the last few years. "It seems your late account manager was giving out loans," Sliphook said with a wary look. "We will be calling them all in, once you give us the go-ahead." "Hell yes, I want them called in," Sirius said, still looking over his finances. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, but there was about a quarter of his wealth lent out to Death Eaters. Some as close as a month ago. He closed the book and looked at Sliphook. "With penalties and interest," he stated firmly. "It will be done," the vicious goblin said, writing a note. "Now that that's done, I want to write out a will," Lord Black stated, his teeth clenched. "Right away," the goblin agreed, tapping his long finger on the table, making some parchment appear. "We can write it out here, but you will need your lawyer to validate it," he said, poised to begin writing. Sirius waved him off and started dictating what he wanted. He made sure that Harry was the primary recipient, while leaving some to the others that he trusted. He made sure that the adoption was well documented in the will, with notations that proof could be found with his lawyer, and a copy in his vault. He would take this and that proof with him when he went to the Ministry, where Waters would meet him. Meanwhile, Harry and Spike Point were going over his finances. There was nothing unusual in his books, though there had been many attempts over the years for people claiming to be a Potter to get control. There were also quite a few inheritances, that Harry had no idea why. He didn't know these people, so why did they leave him money and house and stuff? When he asked, it was explained to him that they left it to the boy who lived. "Can you put all that in a separate vault?" Harry asked, making some plans on what to do with that money. Not a problem, the goblin said, tapping his finger on the desk and getting the correct forms. They all went over everything, though Harry did try to protest that he didn't need as much money as Sirius made him withdraw. Harry, you are taking 6 other people out for entertainment, you will need all of that, Sirius said, pushing the bag to the teen. It was full of galleons and pounds. They were standing in the lobby and were drawing a bit of attention, not that either of them cared. The reason Harry was protesting, was that it had come from Sirius' vault. After a few minutes of pushing the bag back and forth, Harry finally snatched it and shoved it in his pocket. Fine, he snapped, glaring at his brother's grin. At that moment, a goblin came up to Sirius. Lord Black, you are needed, he said. Right, give me a moment, the man said politely, then turned back to Harry. Will you be okay getting back to the house, he asked, only a tiny bit worried. It was only to the leaky cauldron. Harry rolled his eyes. Yes, he said, once again glaring at the man. Okay, go straight to the cauldron and flew home. While I'm sure you will be fine in Muggle London, I'm not so sure here. Remember, there have been a lot of rumors about you lately. And someone is trying to kill you. Make that 2 someones, Sirius said, rubbing his goatee, wondering if he should walk Harry to the flue. He can use our flue, the goblin said, looking at Harry. He didn't want to wait while Lord Black escorted the boy to the pub. I can. Harry said, surprised. Yes, so come this way, the goblin all but snarled at being questioned. Then he turned sharply and led the way. Once Harry was back home, Sirius followed the goblin to where the others were meeting. He got to the room and noted Bill and 2 goblins. One dressed like an adventurer, the other like royalty. He cautiously made his way to Bill. Lord Black, be no to Ragnok, king of the goblins, Sharpclaw said, bowing to his king. Oh, greetings, Ragnok, Sirius said, sketching his own bow. The king waved him off and gestured for him to sit next to Bill. We only need you to give us permission to search the vaults of all those in your family, the king started, pulling out a parchment. This is a contract, stating that we will not take anything from the vaults unless it is what we are searching for. I have already signed it, it needs your signature, he said, pushing the contract to Sirius. Sirius took it and looked it over. It was a quite simple contract, saying just what Ragnok said it would. Bellatrix's and Narcissa's personal vaults would be searched. If the Horcrux wasn't in those vaults, they'd have to come up with another plan. Seeing that there was no fine print, he grabbed a quill and signed it, then pushed it back. Good, the king said, then started shouting orders to those outside the door. We are finished, unless you 2 have something else to tell us, he said, looking at the 2 humans. No, that's all we needed, Bill said, getting up and bowing, while Sirius copied him. We will destroy any of the vile things we find. Good day, the king said in obvious dismissal. The 2 wasted no time in leaving, soon they were in the lobby of Gringotts. Then the 2 men headed out of the bank. What are you going to do now? Sirius asked Bill as they stood at the bottom of the marble stairs. He was glancing around Diagon Alley, and was just smiling at everyone, creeping them out. I'm going back to the house. I still have some research to do. You, the curse breaker asked, heading towards the cauldron. I'm going to the ministry to raise hell, Sirius answered with his bark-like laugh. Have fun, Bill said, chuckling along with him. Oh, I will, the dogman said, a wicked smile playing over his face. To that, Bill had no doubt. HP. Around the time the trio left for the bank, Moody decided it was time to face Albus and Snape. He went to the flue and called the burrow. Sticking his foot in the fireplace, because he really couldn't get on the floor with his peg leg, he waited for someone to answer. Soon enough he heard Arthur say, "What can I do for you, Alastair?" "Is Albus there?" the one-eyed man asked, leaning over a bit so his voice would carry. "No, I believe he's at Hogwarts," the redhead said. Moody thought he hear a bit of humor in the other man's voice. "Right, thanks," was all Moody said, pulling his foot out of the fire. He then turned to the people still sitting at the table. "I'm heading out. Tell Sirius I'll be back tonight," he stated, with a curt nod to the kids. "Okay," came the answer of many. He nodded again and stomped out. When he got to the front stoop, he disapparated. He appeared at the gates of Hogwarts. Grunting with frustration on having to walk all the way to the castle, he started his journey. About 10 minutes later, he was no spring chicken, he came to the doors. Right as he was making his way up the steps, Albus opened the doors. "Ah, Alastair, what can I do for you today?" the old man asked, waiting for his friend to ascend the stairs. "I need to talk to you and Snape," the Exorcer said, coming to the top of the steps. "Whatever for?" Albus said, leading the way to his office. "Order stuff," was all the answer he got. Albus sighed and continued walking. He glanced at his old friend and tried to read his face. Nothing. There simply was no indication about what his friend wanted to talk about. So, he silently led the way to his office. He knew nothing he said would change that. Alastair confirmed that with his next words. "Don't bother, you'll get nothing from me until we are all safely ensconced into your office," Moody said as he continued walking. Years of experience with Albus let Alastair know just what to do and say to handle the old man. Dumbledore just sighed again and led on. A few minutes later they were at the gargoyle. Giving the password, Albus stepped onto the rotating stairs. Moody joined him, thankful they were self-rising. They entered the office, and Dumbledore went to the fireplace and called Snape. "You seem upset today, my friend. Can you tell me what is bothering you?" "I can assure you that anything you heard has a good reason," Albus said, trying to feel out what was bothering his longtime friend. "Albus, you've known me for a long time, why do you think I would fall for your grandfather act?" Moody asked, his face getting grumpier. He really hated that Dumbledore would try and treat him like a newbie. "Alastair, I am appalled that you would think that. I am merely concerned that something I have done has upset you," the old man said, a contrite look on his face. Moody grunted and held his tongue. About that time, Snape finally came through the flue. "What is this about?" Snape snarled, glaring at Alastair. "I have potions that need tended." "Sit down, Snape," Moody growled, pointing to an empty chair. This man, he hated. There weren't many he could say that about, but this one, just rubbed him wrong. He didn't like that Albus let him get by with so much that should have seen Snape in Azkaban. That, and from what he heard from the kids, well, seeing the end of this abuser would be a pleasure. Now, it was up to him to see if he could put the fear of Mad-Eye Moody into him. Reluctantly and with a great deal of sneering, Severus complied. "Now that we are all here, Alastair, what did you need to talk to us about?" the headmaster asked, folding his hands together and placing them on his desk. "I have a few things to tell you, and ask you, that I feel you should know. I'm not breaking any confidentiality with tell you, but don't ask what I won't tell," Alastair started off, giving them a gimlet eye. "We know about the Horcruxes, as you know. We've found them all and are in the process of obtaining them." "No, I'm not telling you where," he stated, folding his arms, almost daring one of the two to try and breach his mind. If you will not tell us where, then why tell us at all? Sirius sneered, looking down his long hooked nose at the man. I'm only telling you, so you don't do something stupid, he sneered back with just as much loathing. Like you're doing at the ministry, Albus. I know Black told you that it was fruitless to be there, but as usual you are not listening, he added, giving Dumbledore a disappointed look. What we are guarding at the ministry is quite important. You would know that if you had not left the order, Dumbledore stated, folding his hands on his desk. I've done more since I left the order than I did the month I was there, Moody disagreed, glaring at his friend. Take Black's advice and keep your people out of the ministry. I will think on it. Now, if you do indeed know where the Horcruxes are, would it not be imperative for you to tell me? After all the order could help, Albus asked, ignoring the advice, and sliding his hands into his lap as he sat back. No, I don't think you would, or even could, help. I think that you'd try to take over and botch it up, Moody said, keeping his magical eye on the other man's hands. I am deeply offended that after years of friendship that you think so little of me, Dumbledore said, truly upset that one of his dearest friends would think him so tyrannical. It's your action this last year that have led me to my conclusions. For example, if you hadn't kept everything close to your chest, then we could have stopped that madman from coming back. And don't even say anything about the thrice-damned prophecy. Only a fool would put the end results of a war on a teen's shoulder. He glared at his friend. You know the prophecy, the aghast headmaster asked, hoping that wasn't true. That is why I told you to quit guarding it. Black told us there was one. I even recall him telling me that Harry does too. He threw that tidbit in there to see how the old man would react. Harry knows the prophecy? Albus asked, his face taking on a fearful look. Alastor wondered about that. Did he think the boy would go and tell everyone? Of course, the boy wonder knows. I am sure that he has told his sycophants as well, Snape sneered, snorting at the look Moody leveled him. No, he doesn't know the whole of it. And I can tell you now that and neither they nor I believe in such hooey anyway. I thought you didn't either, Albus, Mad Eye stated, tilting his head in curiosity. Whatever do you mean? The old man inquired. I mean, that you never have believed in divination in the past. I remember the many times you told me it was all misleading, the one-eyed man stated, looking at the ever-paling faces of the men in front of him. Yet, here you are trying to mold one to work as you want it. I've known you a long time, Albus, yet I never before took you for a fool. I expect that hearing one given has changed my perspective, the old man said, slouching his shoulders. That doesn't give you cause to ruin a young man's life, Moody accused, then looked to Snape. You have no excuse either, he snarled. Potter is an arrogant torag, the potions master sneered. Really, because I've spent quite a bit of time around the lad, and I find him to be quite humble, was the rebuttal. All Potters are arrogant, Snape rebutted as if it were fact. Look here, Snape was as far as he got before Dumbledore stopped them. Enough, our opinion of young Harry is not up for discussion right now. What I want to know is why you are denying me information that I can use to end the war, Albus said a bit harshly. Doesn't feel good, does it? Having the shoe on the other foot, Alastor barked, laughing a bit as he rubbed his chin. You've been denying us information for ages. I don't think you've told us the whole truth since you started the order back in the First War. Alastor, how can you accuse me of such? You know as well as I that some information must never get out, the headmaster said, looking intently at his friend. Albus, young Sirius gave us one word, and in the space of 2 days, We've uncovered more that the weeks we spent under your regime, the other man said, still keeping his eyes on the both of them. We know what, who, why and where. That's 3 times as many things than you told us. Alas, I am sorry you feel this way, my friend. Would it be at all possible to tell us what you know? He tried again. I did. What you need to know, is what I told you. Oh, and by the way, Sirius knows what you tried to do, going to Bones to see if she'd press charges for kidnapping. It backfired. He has had his lawyer on this from the start. I would strongly suggest you not try again, Alastair stated, a smug look on his face. Albus just nodded, it was a long shot anyway. So, you are just going to let those still in the order die, was Snape's question, bring the other man's attention back to him. No, I'm giving you all a warning. If you don't have all the information, then leave it to those that do. That means, quit guarding the prophecy. As I said, Harry knows about it, and he doesn't care. The unspeakables know you're sneaking around, so just stop before someone gets killed or arrested. I mean, do you really think anyone you have standing down there could take on a Death Eater, let alone, Riddle? Or that they are going to be let go for trespassing? Get it together, Albus, or you're going to get people killed, Mad Eye said, living up to his name while his magical eye went berserk. Tom must not know. It's guarded, closer now than a few days ago. Let people do their jobs, damn it. I will take that under advisement, the headmaster sighed, thinking on what he could do with the free time the order had. Now that Harry was with Sirius, there was no need to guard him. If the prophecy was indeed watched, there was no need there either. Maybe, he could get his people to spy on Sirius group. That way he would find out information that they knew. Perhaps, he could get someone in the group, or sway one of the members to turn back to the order. Remus, Nymphatea, or even Andromeda. He'd have to think about it. As it was, he was very put out that his longtime friend was withholding information. There are few other things that have come up that I'd like some answers to, Alastair said, relaxing, as much as he was able, in his chair. When we went to Wiltshire, we found that the information we had on the wards and the number of Death Eaters, was vastly understated. Any idea why that is, Snape? He glared at the spy with both his magical and non-magical eyes. I only reported what I was told I could, the man said, sniffing importantly. By whom, was the question. Albus, of course, came the reply. You told him to give us false information. Merlin, damn it, Albus, why? Moody raised his voice. I was trying to keep morale up. If the others know just how strong Voldemort has gotten, they will not wish to stand against him, the old man replied, sinking further in his chair. He was so tired of being questioned like an unruly school child. That is the lamest excuse I've heard yet. Keep up morale is all fine and good, but if you go into a fight expecting 5 opponents, and seeing 10, then you are as good as dead, the other man snapped back. It was never my intention to have to order fight, Alastair. You should know that, the headmaster said, straightening in his throne-like chair. I know you never used what Snape told you, but I thought you would have at least used us to protect the innocent, or assist in the final battle, Moody said. Going over what all the Order had done since this all restarted. Which wasn't a whole hell of a lot. In the last war, they did go out and fight, so what changed? He voiced the question. I cannot give you an answer you would like, Albus hedged. Truthfully, it was the prophecy, but he knew his friend wouldn't like that. I have to say, Albus, I am very disappointed in you. You are leading people to their death. I know for a fact that you've let the curriculum of this school fall so low, that everyone, and I do mean everyone, has to have remedial classes when they graduate. If they want to be healers, aurors, or even heads of departments, they need to be taught how. Things they should have learned here. You care more about your pet Death Eater than you do about those you're supposed to care about, Moody stated, waving at the sneering man with a look of disgust. Hogwarts is a top-notch school, the headmaster denied. No, it is not, Alastor scoffed, pinning the old man with a disgusted look. I looked it up, it's a second-rate school. You are taking away what makes us magical and trying to conform the new generation into something else. Why else would you cancel the culture classes, the rituals, and the account management? The one-eyed man questioned. They had all been classes when he went to school. The Muggleborn. No, they are not just Muggleborn, they are wizards and witches. They are coming into a new culture, they should adapt. We are not the same, we didn't celebrate the Christian holidays, like Christmas, Halloween, or Easter, or whatever other ones they have. We celebrated Yule, Samhain, and spring equinox. They are the same thing, Albus said, looking confused. No, they are not. There is no ritual in the Christian holidays, not ones that touch magic. You know as well as everyone that magic is an entity. That it needs to be thanked. You took that away from the children these last few decades, and now most of those that graduate will never reach their full potential, unless they self-study, or get a family to teach them. Moody growled, leaning forward as if to intimidate his friend. The Muggleborn are more comfortable with what they know, Dumbledore tried again. So those raised in the wizarding world mean less to you than those not, was the angry question. I do not want the Muggleborn to leave when they've finished here, the headmaster replied. So you will leave generations of magical stunted, just for the sake of a few wary feelings? Are you daft? Moody yelled, getting very upset with what he was here. Those rituals were not helpful to anyone, came the rebuttal. I decided to make the Muggleborn more comfortable in their new environment, he added firmly. That wasn't your call, Alastor snarled, thumping his hand on the desk in front of him. Those rituals are a part of our culture and you have denied them to those who come to us. Now, I'm not saying that we should not progress, we are a bit stagnant at the moment, but that is because your conforming has had every grind to a halt. Explain what you mean, Snape said, very curious to what the Exorcer meant by that statement. Rituals are needed to move forward. It is only when we can ask magic to assist us that we can learn more about it. If we don't, then we will stutter and die, was an equally firm reply. Hogwash, Snape said, folding his arms. I event spells all the time in my youth. Right, and since you left, how many have you created? The one-eyed man asked, lifting his right eyebrow in inquiry. Snape said nothing. You are half the problem, the other man stated, giving the younger man a disdained look. You refuse to teach and come down on anyone that doesn't help your cover. And don't give me that bullshit that you must maintain your act. I know for a fact that you do it for pleasure. If you didn't, you wouldn't have hurt the society the way you have. He glared at the potions master. I am only. Bullshit, Alastor stated, slamming his hand on the armrest of the chair. Alastor, Severus has my complete confidence, came the tired or refrain. Don't you see, Albus? The two of you are a major part of why we are stuck in the 1400s. We can't move on, because the lack of education and the lack of magical celebrations are pitting purebloods against Muggleborn. If you taught what they needed to know, then there would be more camaraderie. Perhaps not pure peace, but they wouldn't lash out at one another as often. You have tried so hard to appease everyone, that you've hurt everyone, he finished, taking a few deep breaths to calm a bit. He hadn't realized that this was true until he put it into words. "What would you have me do, old friend?" the headmaster questioned. "Either fix your mistakes, like get rid Snape, or make him do his job." He tried to assert some feelings into that, to make Albus listen. "Resume the lost classes, and try to find a middle ground, instead of taking away the magical culture. Severus is needed. I cannot know what Tom is up to, if he does not do his job," the other man protested. He was quite used to people demeaning Snape, and his teaching habits, or lack thereof. They just didn't understand what was needed. Those classes would require teachers that the school just can't afford. "You've just proved my point," Moody pointed out, sighing in disappointment. "You are lying through your teeth. I've seen the ledger. I know that you could do a great deal more than you are. You are almost as bad as Riddle, you're just going about it in a different way and at the opposite end. Instead of repressing the Muggleborn, you are repressing everyone else." The headmaster opened his mouth to deny it, but Alastor just slashed his hand at him. He was done talking. "I'm glad you lost a few of your positions, Albus, and I will do everything in my power to make sure you don't get them back," he threatened, then sighed again. He knew Albus would keep his own counsel, and he was wasting his breath trying to change his mind about Snape. "I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to stop," Alastor stated, glaring at the old man who used to be his friend. "Harry. No, the fate of the universe does not rest on that young man's shoulders. What of the Death Eaters, the giants, the werewolves, the vampires, or whatever else Riddle gets to fight for him? Is Potter supposed to fight them all, on his own? Damn it, Dumbledore, what is going on in your head?" the one-eyed man shouted, leaning forward in his chair. "I'm only doing what I know best for the whole of Britain." "I know you don't see that, but I truly am trying to make our world great," Dumbledore said with a sigh. "Your vaulted greater good isn't helping anyone. Take my advice, disband your order, or someone is going to get killed. And if they do, I will make sure that is all rest on your shoulders." "Reel in your pet, reinstate classes," Moody said, leveraging himself out of the chair. "Heed my words, Albus, or you will die disappointed and a disappointment." He had had enough with this disillusioned old man. He once thought of him as a great leader, but now that those tinted glasses were gone, well, he'd do his best to train those that needed it. Perhaps, he could get Arthur to let the kids come back to headquarters when they've done with Umbitch. They would certainly learn more. He might get the word out that Hogwarts was repressing their children, and see if they didn't pull the students out. Something to think about later. "Alastor, try to understand," the old man pleaded. He truly didn't see why his old friend could not see it his way. He needed all the people he could get to help him when the war was over. All hands would be needed to rebuild what Tom would tear down. It didn't even cross his mind to stop that from happening. Only that he would lead the rebuilding. "Nope, I've heard enough," Moody replied, opening the door. "Oh, and leave the kid alone. He's got all the help he needs," were his final words as he left. He started towards Minerva's office. While he was here, he might as well tell her of their plans. First, he had to convince her not to tell Albus. Hopefully, that wouldn't be too hard. HP. Sirius was waiting in the atrium for his lawyer. He looked at that hideous statue again, and his fingers itched to blow it to smithereens. The two exchanged parchments when they met. Then Sirius headed towards the Minster's office to talk to a toad. His lawyer went to meet Bones, to make sure everything was documented. As he made his way to Umbridge, Sirius was laying out his discussion in his head. He needed to make sure that that woman was well and truly frightened of him, without outright threatening her. That probably won't happen, she did seem full of herself. He was going to need to lay all his cards on the table. Well, the trump cards anyway. Upon reaching his destination, he stopped to blink his eyes a few times. The office was pink. Completely and utterly pink. It made his head hurt. Umbitch wasn't in the office, so he went to hunt her down. He found her trying to intimidate one of her co-workers. That woman seemed to think she was more important than she was. He knocked on the door frame to the office. "Umbitch, I want to talk to you," he stated firmly, like a lord should. "Lord Black, have you come to drop your suit against the ministry?" she simpered, turning to meet the man face on. The one she was berating could wait. If Black was going to drop the charges, Cornelius would be happy. "Let's talk in a meeting room," Sirius suggested. He didn't want to have to be in that office if he could help it. "Do I need to inform the minster?" she asked, batting her eyelashes, like she was flirting, which made Sirius do an internal full-body shudder. "Why don't I tell you what I have to say, then you can decide," he hedged, gesturing for her to lead the way. "Of course," she said cautiously. Nevertheless, she led the way to a small meeting room. The two entered and sat across from one another. Sirius took a piece of parchment from his robe, laid it on the table and slid it over. She looked confused, until she picked it up and read it. Then a look of horror showed on her face, and she dropped the parchment like it had stung her. The only thing written there was two words, "Ellen Cracknell." She looked warily at the man in front of her. "What do you want?" she asked fearfully. "Nothing much, just for you to do your job, and your job only. If I find that you are interfering with me and mine again, this," he picked up the parchment and waved it in her face, "will become public," he said, taking the piece and putting it in his robes. "I have always done my job," she protested, still staring at where the parchment had been hidden. "No, I think you do far beyond what is required for an undersecretary," he rebutted, keeping his voice calm. "I don't know what you mean," she denied. "Listen to me, woman, I know what you did." "I can't prove it, or you would not be sitting here," Sirius stated, leaning into her personal space, as much as the table would let him. "If I hear even a sliver or rumor that you have overstepped yourself again, well, just take this as a friendly reminder that you have skeletons in your cauldron, and leave me and mine alone," he threatened. "I will do what is necessary to protect the ministry," she stated firmly. She would not be threatened, she was stronger than that. Her position protected her. On the other hand, if that name was made public, it might just be the end of her career. "Then I will bury you," came the reply. "Do you think this is all I have on you? You must not know my family well if you think I came to you without protection. Listen to me, you toad, don't hurt anyone I know, Harry knows, or their families. Or I will pull your oversized ego off and blast it with every blasting spell I know," he said, getting up from the table, kinda hoping that she disregarded his warning. He would take great pleasure in seeing her hang. "Don't think to threaten me, Black. I know things about you as well. Your family has done many shady dealings that I could bury you too." She stood, putting her fist on the table, heaving herself up, and leaning forward. "Oh, you foolish woman, there is nothing in my tree that could hurt me as much as I could you," Sirius said, barking with laughter. "Go ahead, tell the world what they already know." "I can go after Potter," she made her first mistake. Sirius drew his wand and dug it into her many chins. "Then you will be dead," he said, his voice like ice. She looked into those icy gray eyes and panicked. Closing her eyes so she didn't have to see her upcoming death, she took a breath. She was the undersecretary, she would not be intimidated. Fine, we shall see who had the bigger wand, she said, backing away from the man. He let her go, he had made his point. Now, it was up to her to see how quickly and hard she fell. Glad we understand one another, he said, leaving the nervous woman in the room as he made his way to the minster's office. Not waiting for the secretary announce him, he opened the door. Black, the portly man behind the desk uttered, off-footed. Fudge, I am here to serve you these papers. Not only am I suing the ministry, but my ward, Harry Potter, is suing you, personally, for slander. If you do not cease and desist, then we will make it a criminal matter. Good luck with that. Oh, and my lawyer is good. You will be left nudeless. Sirius said all of this with a smile as he threw the parchments on the desk. Then he tilted his hat and left, leaving a stuttering man behind him. Now that he was done throwing his weight around, he felt good. Hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe.